talked to representatives of several volunteer organizations about their help to Ukrainian military in the east of Ukraine. Many volunteers are helping Ukrainian soldiers in the east, and we are talking to representatives of 4 of them: Olha Bosak, co-founder of the NGO Ukrainian Freedom Time; Oleksandra Tarasova, coordinator of the Winds of Phoenix Fund; Olha Kobylynska, coordinator of the Come Back Alive Fund; Serhiy Serikov, volunteer of People's Reorganization; and Ivona Kostyna, coordinator of Volunteer 100 Ukraine World. So in spite of the cease of the truce, combat actions continue, shellings continue, and our work is going on as well. There are almost 100 volunteer organizations in Ukraine, and at the moment we are trying to coordinate our efforts more and more. The Ukrainian Freedom Fund was created during the escalation of the conflict in Crimea, and we are still trying to unite the efforts of volunteers practically around the world, not only the governments of other countries, but average citizens as well continue to provide help to Ukraine, and we will work until the truce will become real. The needs that were there previously, we tried to satisfy. For instance, our fund is buying body armor, footwear, helmets, heat visors, and even notebooks, laptops. We will need very much warm clothes and winter footwear. We have to make sure that if the situation remains as it is, we have to take care of the comfort and warmth of our military, Ukrainian military. So, this great fund that unites efforts of many volunteers in many countries, and the council of our foundation and volunteers and representatives in more than 30 countries are working for free. This is our volunteer work. This is a signal that people are ready to join in and help the Ministry of Defense. You probably all know about the Council of Volunteers that's been created at the Ministry of Defense, and the minister has delegated a lot of authority to volunteer organizations, in particular to determine what should be bought for the military. This is even more than we expected. So how to buy all this? We hope very much that our volunteer organizations will help, so to say, will help our state bodies to build a good system of tenders as we have already. And for instance, our foundation activity is absolutely transparent and objective. There's a financial checkup by one of the biggest auditing companies in the world, PricewaterhouseCoopers. So this is what we're waiting on the nationwide level. Oleksandra Tarasova, Winds of Phoenix, hello. Our foundation is one of the biggest in Ukraine, and we do all those things that were enumerated now. We also do repairs of aviation machinery. One of the planes is already flying, and we have bought equipment for the second one, and also another helicopter. We also pay for the repairs of armored machinery from the depots of the Ministry of Defense, and 8 such APCs are already going to the front. Yes, as many volunteer organizations, we have difficulties with financing, but generally speaking, the people support us. We also sent already some warm clothes, but we still wait that the Ministry of Defense will close this topic because they promised to buy warm gloves and warm hats and warm jackets. And it looks like volunteer organizations will not have to buy some things. And also the topic of food has been closed because this means that we buy some additional food products, whatever, coffee, tea, some candy maybe, and whatever can warm up a military person in winter nights. We're trying to join efforts with other volunteer organizations. The coordination center at the Ministry of Defense is being set up now. We met our custom officers today. They want to take part in this as well because a lot goes through the border. It is logical that there should be no duty there on this commodity. And there should be also no duty on the means of protection, like helmets and body armor. So as a result, we will probably have one powerful volunteer center where, apart from the accredited volunteer organizations, you'll see the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of the Interior, plus Customs Service, and we think that the Ministry for Social Policy as well, because they are responsible for documentation of the bringing in of humanitarian convoys. And this will make the life of volunteers much simpler, because until now we've been doing those illegally against the law. But now we will have a recognition of the volunteer movement at the nationwide level, and this is rather important. Olha Kobylynska, coordinator of the Come Back Alive Fund. Our project, and we have not been registered officially yet. Since May, we have collected over 9 million hryvnia, and over the last week, we've collected 1.5 million hryvnia. And you know, when everybody in Ukraine does feel the crisis, our story from Donetsk airport has probably touched upon many people. With our so-called cyborgs, has again concerned the society, and last night we have packed a busload of a very needed equipment, and we sent it to the Donetsk airport. Our main specialization is night visors, navigators, communication devices. We bought 5 navigators as well. There's also a television long-distance visor that takes the distance of 20 kilometers. We were able to buy a used one, which cost $10,000. At the moment, everybody is buying warm clothes, but in reality, the Ministry of Defense said that on the 10th of October, the warm uniform should be bought for the entire personnel of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Well, we'll see it tomorrow. As far as food is concerned, the Ministry of Defense says that the army is provided with the food, but yesterday I got a call from one of the battalion, and they said their platoon only has food enough for one day, and all their appeals to their commanders were in vain. So we are now packing a busload of food to send to them, and we don't have any problems with food. People are ready to help, so we are solving the current problems, but strategically we would like to see a closer cooperation with the Ministry of Defense. We hope that this coordination council will be efficient and public activists will be allowed to take part in controlling tender procedures. We'll take them under our public control, and I hope that very soon we will be able to create the system of the work of this cumbersome and beset with corruption structure of the Ministry of Defense. We will make it more efficient because volunteer organization and mass volunteer movement in Ukraine have proven that you really can work efficiently and urgently solve urgent matters. So join the volunteer movement. I think the future is Ivona Kostyna, the coordinator of in Volunteer 100 Ukraine.
I am the representative of the Ukraine World Fund, which is also helping military in the ATO zone. We are also helping the battalions of the Ministry of the Interior. Now, what I see is that the activity among foreign citizens has grown. They're very much interested in the situation in Ukraine because of the events in Debaltseve and Donetsk airport. Also, the Ukrainian community all over the world are very interested in our activities, and they continue to provide their assistance. I would like also to mention that volunteer movement cannot count on the assistance of the Ministry of Defense and risk with the warm clothes, and we continue to purchase warm clothes for our servicemen because at night the temperature goes down to -5. It's cold. Those of you who are just tourists, you can understand what is -5 on the ground. And now it's getting colder and colder with every day in Izium. There are many guys who are just got cold, and the influenza is ahead of us, and the better our guys equipped with the medicines and with warm clothes so that we can prevent epidemic in the front line. That means we will be more efficient in the winter. That's one of the challenges that is ahead of us, but with all the coordination that we now have, we will cope with this challenge. And also volunteers are active all over the country. There was a period of preparation to winter which covered the whole country. All had to get ready to winter period. Now the situation has been more or less stabilized and people are getting more active again. I agree that now the situation with the supply of food is much easier. The Ministry of Defense is purchasing a lot of food products for the front, but the needs are different, and these are personal, and these are the issues for every battalion, and battalions continue to request battalions about some specific things. And we also prepare the sleeping bags. We do not know what will be happening with the snow cleaning machinery in the front, and we are bringing the winter tires to the front line, to the equipment, the repair of the equipment, preparing it to the winter period, preparing all the battalions for this winter time. That's what we are doing. And we also have Serhiy Serikov, volunteer of People's Rear. Serikov, I was at Euromaidan till February 20. From the 26th, I was in Crimea. I was also doing a lot of volunteer work in Crimea. I would like to thank all my comrades, volunteers, Oleksandra, who's now in Moscow. This is the person with who I cooperated. He helped a lot with his money. He was providing fuel for my car. And in Crimea, we worked closely with Crimean Tatars, with Mejlis. I would like to mention Zavdia Saliyeva, who heads Crimean Tatar women in Crimea. In Mejlis, they had this Ukrainian flag. And there are many people who were following these green men in Crimea, and they give the information via me to the Ministry of Defense, to the Deputy Minister Petro Meheda, and to the Deputy Minister of the Interior, Mykola Velichkovich. They are my friends from Maidan. Also, look at that. That's in Crimea. I was transporting Ukrainian military. That is Kalanchak. That is before the checkpoint. I was transporting military, helping our units together with the organization Krim SOS, and Oleksandra was in this organization. Oleksandra, with his own money, was helping. He has never been involved in any terrorist activity. He was transporting military, and I have never transported anything related to terrorism, and he wasn't involved in terrorist activities. By the way, that is a famous father, Ivan, and via him we kept communication with the military who were blocked in Crimea at Perivalna. He's now in Kiev and participates in volunteers movement. I would also like to say a few words about the East. I've been involved in transporting humanitarian load from Volunteer 100 Ukraine World. We took some humanitarian aid to Artemivsk. Ukrainian World is doing a lot. I see how they were sending several trucks to the east within one day. That's like you see this big van. It takes 3 tons. And I have recently returned from 55th Artillery Brigade, which is located in Zaporizhia. But these are artillerists who are providing fire support to our units. What else I would like to say? Also talking about support of our military in ATO, that is special units, Kiev, Zaporizhia, which shelled the tank in Kramatorsk and Slavyansk. These are border guards, and that's part of my reporting. That's the head of Zaporizhia Regional Department of the Interior, and he's heading this Kiev unit. I would like to thank Kievites and all Ukrainians who provide everything needed to the volunteer hundreds, everything that is then transported to ATO zone. I also would like to talk a little bit about Crimea. I gave that helmet at Crimean Tatar Kurultai to Crimean Tatars. I gave it to Mustafa Jamilev, and I understand it's left there. And if I have a chance to give it to him here, I will give it to him personally. That is from a painter, Natalia Grinenko. She's a Crimean painter, artist. Sorry, that's Kiev artist, Kadin Fisenyuk and the Crimean artist Grinenko. She made such a picture in memory of the Il-76 aircraft, which is in Lugansk. This picture is now held by Olga Bogomolets, and it will be put to auction, and the money will be used to help the families of those who were killed. These are all these crews of the aircraft. Mustafa Djemilev was here this week in our press briefing. Follow our announcements. He remembers, Mustafa Djemilev remembers me. Please finish, because we need time for questions. I would like to finish by saying glory and honor to courageous people who defend our motherland, and I would like to request you to commemorate the memory of those who died by the minute of silence.
Дуже дякую всім.
And thank you all. Please join us for questions and answers session. I have a question. American Army organizes and well, they have a lot of support from different NGO organizations. Do you have any plans to switch from volunteers to the format of some legal entities, foundations? Many of them are already legal official organizations which are collecting money to official accounts, and they spend this money when they receive requests from the military units, and that's just the scheme you are talking about. The funding of our funds is not at the scale like it is in the US, but it is because the charity has just been born in this country. We have never had such a format, like national money raising for some program. We now launched a project by the drone instead of a big board for political organizations. But now we do not get any feedback from political organizations. Even our politicians, they do not know, they do not want to be engaged in charity. That is the movement which goes from the bottom up. And now we are just the common regular Ukrainians, but we joined this movement and we have become some leaders. So basically the charity has just been born, is being formed into some clans. There should be very clear rules for that, but we don't have that yet. I would like to say that besides the examples given to you just now, there's our foundation, which was initiated by Ukrainian and foreign entrepreneurs. The members of our board are foreigners also, but we created another know-how in Ukraine. Our members of the board do not get any salaries. On Friday in Brussels, there will be a charity concert to raise money for military and wounded. And this concert is organized by our volunteers. More than 30 volunteers in the world work for Ukraine free of charge. And another question. if we take it in percentage, what is the share of the money from Ukrainian citizens and foreigners? Because we have many Ukrainian charity organizations, we decided to focus on international audience. 80% of our donations come from abroad. The biggest donors are in the US, Canada, Great Britain, but we get donations even from Russia. And I would like to say there are funds which are working with the military, wounded, and refugees. It's easier for them to raise money. Many people prefer to donate to humanitarian programs. We are working on military programs. We are purchasing heat, thermal visors, night vision devices, and we do not always have big support. But talking about percentage, about the share, about 50% we get from abroad. And what's the situation in other funds? 50 by 30, 70 Ukrainian, 30 foreign. I agree with the representatives of Wings of Phoenix. It depends on what the foundation is doing. Like my colleague said, those who are working, who are providing some equipment to ATO, doesn't mean that we are not working with the wounded people. We do supply medicines and medical equipment to some hospitals, but when your priority is ATO, it's more Ukrainian audience that supports us because it's our war and our people are most interested in finishing that as soon as possible.
I have another question. You say that the volunteer movement has been recognized at the highest state level. There's a dialogue with many ministries and with decision makers in those ministries, but which are the key problems that are not solved yet? And what does the state have to do to help the volunteer movement to be even more efficient? Frankly, the biggest problem for us is the problem with cooperation with the system of the Ministry of Defense and the armed forces, and a separate story is officials that we have to cooperate with. Of course, we do coordinate, but until the system of the Ministry of Defense changes and of the headquarters, general headquarters, we, I think, shall demand changes from the state system. For instance, we were preparing the APC for Brigade 94. In order to take it from the unit, we spent 4 days because we had to get signatures from 3 headquarters. And, someone went to lunch, someone went to walk, and then everybody up and went home. And this is the system of the Ministry of Defense. It doesn't stop them that their subordinates are dying there, and because people are going in lightweight four-wheel drive there while the APC is here. We all know that even 2 or 3 years ago, you had to pay $20,000 to $30,000 for a office of for a position of a brigade commander because they never wanted to go to war. And it is not about state helping volunteers, but rather volunteers helping the state and help also to investigate corruption activity. Look at the statistics of the military prosecutor's office. They have now launched 4,000 cases about desertment, but we saw things like one of the battalion commanders demanded a bribe from volunteers so that they could bring the help to the front line. It is a great positive thing that the volunteer movement is developing and offering an alternative to the Ukrainian society. We have a lot of problems, not only in military sphere, but let's take the volunteers who are caring about the wounded. Why don't we have our Ukrainian hit visors? Why there's no matrix in Ukraine and we have to bring those hit visors from abroad? All those problems are linked like a chain, and against the background of war, the Ukrainian society is offering alternative to a rotten and immobile state mechanism. There's a separate story with officials. Maybe there's an order from the president's administration so that officials also become volunteers. And I have had a call from an official from the Kharkiv state administration, and he starts to ask me, how do you buy medicines? And I tell him, we are not about medicines. You should address them. Why are you doing this? The head of the administration asked me to provide him with a report. Why? Why do you need it? Do you need some papers? You know, we do not have any salary for this, and we were working around the clock. But the officials, you know, the brain of an official is like this. The person is there, and they do not understand that you can do your work efficiently. The main thing for them is to report back to their superiors. Any other questions? On behalf of the orphanage next to Melitopol, the village of Novomykolaivka, I wholeheartedly thank our volunteers and Ukrainians who help us. I care about this orphanage since January during Maidan, and the Volunteer 100 Ukraine World is helping a lot. This is a sincere heart of gratitude from orphans. And as far as the attitude toward volunteers is concerned, I can tell you from my own experience that even road patrol, they know my bus. I call my bus Jolly Bus because, you know, they do allow me to go free in spite of everything. If we don't have any other questions, we thank very much the volunteers for the great work you are doing, and I bow my head, and also from the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. Thank you, and in a minute we'll have our next briefing.